Okay, I'd like to take a few minutes to go over the Unit 3 review. And as I do this, you may have answers or corrections that are slightly different from what I have, and that's just fine. The key with your corrections is that they probably need to be coming in about the same spots, and they should be, on most of these, they should be similar in type to the kinds of corrections I'm making. As I look at these ones in part 1 of the Unit 3 review, the first thing that I want to be thinking about is what are the pieces? What are the pieces that I have in my sentence? So on this first sentence, many stores are crowded in December because people are shopping for holiday gifts. I have kind of a break after December, and up to December I have a clause because I have are crowded as my verb and stores as my subject. And again, remember that having a subject and verb is what makes it a clause. And the key then is going to be, is this an independent or a dependent clause? Well, an independent clause could stand on its own as a complete sentence, and since I could stop the sentence at December, this is an independent clause. The second part of this sentence, I also have a subject and verb, people are shopping, so again it's a clause. But here, because of the word because, if I was to start with because and end at gifts, that wouldn't work. It would be incomplete. So we're going to call this a dependent clause. If you look at the punctuation pattern sheet in Angel in the Unit 3 area, this basically follows the same pattern as punctuation pattern number 6, where we start with the independent clause, the complete sentence. We end with the dependent clause. And since the part that's incomplete, the dependent clause, comes after the main sentence, I don't need to put anything between December and because. This sentence is okay. We're going to just leave it alone. In fact, I'm going to erase some of this stuff over here in the middle so it doesn't look like we need to have anything there. This is a perfectly fine sentence. On number 2, some stores have special sales so that they can attract more customers. We do have the word so here, and it's connecting two clauses, but by using the word that with it, it's no longer an independent clause after so. So that makes the second part a dependent clause. First part's an independent clause, though. Stores have, and they can attract. Since it's an independent clause followed by a dependent clause, this is still going to be pattern number 6, and it's also still okay. Now, if I had removed the word that, if that wasn't there, then so would be connecting two complete sentences, and I would want to have put a comma after sales. But here I've got so that rather than just so. Scroll up a little bit. Okay, let's take a look at number 3. If an item is on sale, it may sell for as little as half its regular price. So what I've got is, if an item is on sale, item is, it may sell. The first clause ends at sale, and it's a dependent clause. It's dependent because of the subordinating conjunction if. That makes it less than a complete sentence. It may sell for as little as half its regular price is an independent clause. So since I have a dependent clause first and an independent clause second, this follows the same rules or the same pattern as pattern number 5 on your sheet. So I want to put a comma after sale. And again, the reason for that comma is because this part at the beginning, if an item is on sale, that basically introduces the main sentence. It's an introduction to the main sentence. So introductions get set off with commas. Customers can save a lot of money if they shop carefully. Customers can save. They shop. The part that's highlighted is a dependent clause. The part at the beginning is an independent clause. This follows the same pattern as pattern number 6, so I don't want to put any commas in there. It's okay. Susan Martin needs to be a careful shopper, for she has a large family and needs to buy many gifts. So on this sentence, the first clause ends at shopper, we may be tempted to put a comma before this and, between family and needs, but that and is just connecting a list of verbs. Verb 1 has and verb 2 needs. But we do have the word for here connecting our two clauses. The first clause is independent, second clause is independent. It's using the word for to connect them. So this is like pattern number 4. So it's using the word for, F-O-R, to connect them. It's like pattern 4, F-O-U-R. So I need to put a comma after shopper. Before Susan leaves, she makes a list of places. Susan leaves, she makes. First part is dependent, second part is independent. I'm going to put a comma after home. This is similar to pattern number 5. Scrolling up a little bit. She has a limited amount of money, therefore she can't spend too much money on any one person. This time we have the word therefore connecting the two independent clauses. So I'm going to put a semicolon after money. That ends that first sentence. And therefore is always set off from the sentence it goes with a comma. This is pattern number 3 on your pattern sheet. Her younger children usually get toys. The older children get new clothes. Children get. Children get. We have an independent clause and another independent clause. And since there's no conjunction between toys and the directions say to use only a semicolon or a comma, the only thing I can really do here is to put in a semicolon. Remember, a semicolon is just as strong as a period. This is like pattern number 2. On number 9, Susan buys. She buys small gifts for the adults in her large family. That's really the only verb here is buys. So this is really just one independent clause, or a simple sentence. It's like pattern 1 on the pattern sheet. Adults have agreed. They can spend. Again, we have so that again here. So this is an independent clause followed by a dependent clause. This is pattern number 6. It's okay. Leave it alone. It isn't easy to find a $10 gift for an adult, so Susan has to spend a lot of time. It is, and Susan has, connected by so, independent clause, pattern 4, comma after adult. Okay, final one on this page. On Christmas Day, Susan's family will gather at her parents' home so that they can exchange gifts and have a big family dinner. Again, we've got family will gather and they can exchange and have, but it's connected by so that, which means that we've got an independent clause and a dependent clause. This is pattern number 6, and it's okay. Okay, let me get this in the right spot. Okay, a couple more here. Even though the family members don't give each other a lot of expensive gifts, everyone will be happy. We've got family members do give, and everyone will be. Now the first part of this, all the way up to gifts, that could not stand on its own because of even though. That's a subordinating conjunction. So this first part is a dependent clause, while the second part is independent. So I'm going to put a comma after gifts because this follows the same pattern as pattern 5. On number 14, they enjoy, and then we've got they enjoy. It's connected by in addition, which is like in pattern number 3. So I'm going to put a semicolon after holiday and a comma after in addition. So part 2 is really where we might diverge, where you might have a correct answer, but it might be a very different answer from mine, because we're correcting. So we're correcting in the way that we might want to. So I'm going to try and point out what's wrong with it, and I'll talk about maybe a couple of possible corrections, but your corrections may be different than mine. So on this first part, although many tourists visit Spain, the problem right now is that that's just a dependent clause. And since we've marked it as a complete sentence, we're going to call that a fragment. It is not a complete sentence. But This fragment really does introduce us to the next part, fewer tourists visit its neighbor Portugal, which is an independent clause, a complete sentence. So rather than having a fragment, the easiest way to fix this would probably be to change the period after Spain to a comma and make a lowercase f. If I do that, then no longer is this first part a fragment. Now it's just a dependent clause that introduces an independent clause, and we can call it something like pattern number 5. So again, as I'm doing this, when I'm correcting it to match one of those punctuation patterns. Portugal has a lot to offer tourists. It has many scenic and historical sites. The problem here is right here between tourists and it. Right now it's called a run-on. And it's called a run-on sentence because we have basically 2 complete sentences. The simplest way to fix this might be to put a period there and capitalize I. I could instead, if I wanted, fix this by making the second part dependent, by putting in a word like because. If I stick because there, though, I'm not going to add any other punctuation. I'd be making this into pattern number 6. One of these sites being Cabo da Roca. So here the problem is that being is not a complete verb by itself. Right now we have a fragment. So rather than being, I could change being to a verb that works all by itself, like is. Cabo da Roca is famous. That part's fine, but the part right after that, because it is the westernmost point in continental Europe, that really feels like it's continuing that previous sentence. So rather than putting a period after famous, I'll get rid of that. I'll make a lowercase b, and we're all good. All the land west of Cabo da Roca was unknown territory to most Europeans. Missed a sentence there. Before the age of explorers. So this part is incomplete. It's a fragment right now. All the land west is fine. So rather than putting a period after explorers, I can use it to introduce the next part. So I will change the period to a comma and all lowercase the a to all. During the 16th century, Portugal was a major naval power. That's fine. During the 16th century, Portugal was a major naval power. That reads just fine. Her ships called caravels sailed to Africa, Asia, and the Americas. That part's fine, but this next part, to explore lands then unknown to most Europeans, that's really just the rest of that previous sentence. So I'm going to change that to a lowercase t on 2. I'm going to get rid of the period after Americas. I don't need to add any commas, but that just finishes out that sentence. The first ships to sail completely around the world commanded by a Portuguese navigator named Ferdinand Magellan. Again, first off, let's get rid of the period after navigator and make a lowercase n. That'll make it simpler, because named Ferdinand Magellan is not a complete sentence. But there's also a problem with the first ships to sail completely around the world commanded by. Commanded is not a complete verb here. So I think we need something like were commanded by. That makes the verb more complete. The Portuguese are proud of their history as explorers, therefore they have made Cabo da Roca a tourist site. So here, the problem is not that we don't have all the right words, it's that we don't have all the punctuation. So therefore is connecting 2 complete sentences here, but we need to put a semicolon after explorers and a comma after therefore. You can drive to the government tourist office at Cabo da Roca, then you walk several hundred feet to a steep cliff overlooking the sea. This is definitely a break between 2 complete sentences. So I want to put a period after Roca and capitalize then. A strong wind nearly blows you off your feet. Such a wind once filled the sails of Portuguese ships bound for the New World. So here, a strong wind nearly pulls you off your feet. Such a wind. They don't really seem to quite even go together. So I want to end at feet. Capitalize such. But instead of just a strong wind nearly blows, a strong wind nearly blows you off your feet. That works. Okay. Such a wind once filled the sails of Portuguese ships bound for the New World. Those now work. If you have a good imagination, you can almost imagine the ship's anchor below the cliff. So here, the period is too strong. Imagination, this part really just introduces the next sentence. So instead of a period, we want a comma and a lowercase y. Okay. When you return to the tourist office, again, that's a fragment right now, but it does introduce the next sentence, so I could just put a comma in instead. You can purchase a souvenir of your visit to Cabo de Roca. It is a beautiful multicolored certificate. That's fine, but resembling a medieval handwritten manuscript really seems to finish that sentence. So I'm just going to get rid of the period, lowercase r. And you'll notice that most of what I'm doing here is with fragments, I'm removing punctuation. I've put in these, the writer here has put in extra periods and things to separate sentences when they didn't really need to. The guide fills in the space on the certificate with your name and the date of your visit. He then signs the certificate and stamps it with a wax seal. So here, the comma is not strong enough. We really need to have two complete sentences. An English translation of the certificate appears below. However, you do not have to make any corrections in it. So here we need to have a semicolon and a comma after however. Now they're saying that we don't need to make any corrections, so I guess that means that that part's fine. This is to certify that your name has been to Cape Roca, Sinatra, Portugal, the western Spain, where the land ends. Here still reigns the spirit of faith, and yeah, that looks fine. Okay. Okay, that's it. So again, let me know if you have any questions. If you're looking over this and it doesn't make sense or something, please let me know. When you're correcting your own work, obviously the key is to find where there might be problems, and then the corrections. You have your own choices for the corrections. You could make your punctuation fit any of those punctuation patterns. I think that that cheat sheet for the different punctuation patterns, though, is a good way of kind of seeing whether your sentences fall in line with one of those patterns.